last decades, we have witnessed the catastrophic consequences of flooding, causing devastating damage to property and loss of life. It is widely accepted that in the near future, water levels will continue to rise, making flood protection increasingly urgent.
The temperatures just again above average, 14 Celsius, that's 57 in Fahrenheit.
This is me at work, presenting the weather. Forecasting the weather is challenging enough, but floods are even harder to predict. Since it seems to be impossible to avoid floods, how can we best prepare ourselves?
Temperatures no lower than 7 or 8 degrees. Of course, there is the traditional way of protecting the land by building higher and higher embankments. But now a new strategy is being tested in several North Sea countries. In Alkborough in the UK, in Zuiderklip and FRaME in the Netherlands, and in Kruijbeke and Asia in Belgium. I have decided to go and have a look for myself to see if these projects are as promising as they claim. FRaME is a project sponsored by the European Union. It stands for Flood Risk Management in Estuaries. To explain what an estuary really is, I've hitched a ride in this helicopter. Now the area we are flying over now is subject to two forces of nature. On the one hand, there is the sea with the force of its tides. On the other hand, there is the river with the force of its flow. This is an estuary where sea and river water meet. Now it is the clashing point of two forces of nature, and you can imagine the opposite effect of these two forces can have a damaging effect. Therefore this area is prone to flooding. Over the last decades, water levels have continuously been rising. At the same time, land levels have been lowering. This creates increasing pressure on the flood defence systems. Traditionally, we protect our countries from flooding by building higher and higher embankments. But FRaME examines a totally different approach to keeping our feet dry. What if, instead of fighting the water, we would welcome it? If we would cooperate with nature instead of fighting it? The idea behind FRaME's approach is stunningly simple. By allowing floodwater to overflow this embankment into a designated flood control area, it takes the pressure off the flood defences that protect the towns and villages. I'm here at one of the demonstration sites in Alkborough and I'm here with John. Now John, why was it you wanted me here at this time?
What we can see behind us is the section where the flood bank used to be, and there's a hole in it now which is allowing water into this large area of agricultural land. When the site here fills with water on the highest tides, it has the effect of creating a big wetland area, but it also reduces the high tide levels out in the Humber, and that protects people and property all round the top end of the Humber estuary.
This area of land here in Kruijbeke is the largest area of land designed for flood risk management. It measures over 600 hectares. The site is located at the mouth of the River Schelde and as such is very vulnerable to flood risk. In fact, in 1976, a major flood caused €26 million of damage to people and property. In the near future, this flood control area will significantly reduce that risk. One of the key elements of the FRaME projects is that the water is not fought off anymore. Instead, it is given room to move to an area of land specially designed for this. The land here in the Biesbosch, for instance, flooded regularly before 1970 when the Haringvliet locks were built. Since then, the land fell dry and much of it has been poldered for agricultural use. The new plan is to give this land back to the river and to let nature have its go. It's an approach that has some great advantages. As the land overflows occasionally, a totally new wetland habitat is created. A habitat that attracts very specific flora and fauna and that much of the time is easily accessible for ecotourism. Now, this may look like farmland, and it is, but it's also a flood control area. As all the FRaME demonstration sites, this land is managed so that it can store water when water levels are high and release the water in a controlled way when flood water levels are lowered. This site in Azer combines very clearly the different FRaME objectives. One, the fact that this land can store water creates a safer environment for the villages along the embankment of the river. Two, the temporary flooding of the land creates a totally different wetland habitat that attracts very specific flora and fauna. And three, that in its turn opens up new opportunities for economically and ecologically viable land uses such as ecotourism. Oops, it's like I'm stuck. Facilities like this are built in the new wetland habitats so that people can enjoy the wildlife without disturbing it. Okay, now I have visited all of the demonstration sites and have witnessed how each project has its own particular interpretations of the FRaME objectives. There's one thing I still want to find out. What happens to all this information and experience that is gained at these 5 sites? Apart from being effective flood control areas, the projects I have visited generated a lot of knowledge. Lessons were learnt and conclusions drawn. This information is presented in a manual available on FRaME's website. Policymakers and engineers concerned with flooding in estuaries can access information about best practices for sustainable new land use, agriculture, recreation, communication and engineering works.
FRaME project partners are Dutch Government Service for Land and Water Management, Ministry of the Flemish Community, Divisions Zeeschelde and Nature, Province of Zuid-Holland, and the Environment Agency. FRaME is co-financed by the European Union programme Interreg for the North Sea region.